This is a first quorum call. We have 2 members present. We need 10 for a quorum. Would council members in the building please make their way to the council chambers in order that we may proceed. This is a first quorum call. This is a second quorum call for the City Council. Our count remains at 2. So we will make a second announcement that any council member in the building, if they could please make their way to the council chambers in order that we may begin, it would be very much appreciated. So this is a second quorum call. Now 10:17. We're on a roll. We're up to 3 members. We need 7 for a quorum. Council members would please make their way to the council chambers. We have just a few presentations and a very short agenda. So council members, would you please report to the council chambers so we may begin?
President, is the motion in order? I'll wait for you to move it.
Good morning, everyone. This is almost a meeting of the City Council of the City of Los Angeles this Friday, the 26th of January, the first year of the new millennium, 2001. I'm Councilman Rudy Savornich Jr., Assistant President Pro Tem of the Council, serving as presiding officer today due to the excused absences of Council President John Ferraro and Council President Pro Tem Ruth Galanter. This council meeting, once it begins and we have a quorum, can be seen live on LA City View Channel 35, and we are also being monitored by council phone. This council meeting will be repeated this evening beginning on 7:30 on LA City View, and all council meetings for the week begin at 10 o'clock on Sunday. So you can sit back, watch the council, watch some real competition, then turn on the Super Bowl. So we have some presentations this morning, and we'll do those first, and then we'll proceed with the agenda. So at this time, the chair recognizes Councilman Hernandez for a presentation.
Mr. President, members of the council, and Mr. Burns is not here, but it's my honor today to recognize one of his constituents. And that's a presentation to someone who I know as Hank Morris, but his name is Henry Morris. And I say someone, but someone very important to the city. And I'd like Mr. Morris to please come up if he would. Members of the council, Hank served the people of the city of Los Angeles in the city attorney's office for the last 34 years. He's been here since 1966. His wife, Myrene, is here also. You can come up with us. We're putting you in front of 600,000 households, so. And he's the proud father of Melissa, Mark, and Jessica Joy. He's known as an expert in the area of gun legislation for the city of Los Angeles. With his advice on preemption and other legal issues related to gun control, I know that he's been working with our office in particular in regards to the bullet ban, the sale of bullets, and I know he's been working closely with Councilman Fear's office. The reason I wanted to recognize Hank, and you need to understand that in my office we had a discussion this morning, because my first experience with Hank Morris was very different. It wasn't working on the bullet ban. And I walked up here and I said, do you know why it was that I wanted to recognize you? And he kind of went through his computer bank and couldn't figure it out. And I went through a process that I believe was very important to the city of Los Angeles, and that was the process of creating the Commission on Children, Youth, and Their Families. And the legal counsel that worked with us on those ordinances was Hank Morris. And I was sharing with him that that commission has made a tremendous difference to the families of the city of Los Angeles. The fact that we have more child capital projects for child care projects because of Proposition K has a lot to do with the direction of that particular commission. And the fact that there's a greater emphasis and dialogue going on about children, about their families, has a lot to do with that work. And that's when I met Hank Morris. And that's why I thought it was important that I get an opportunity to recognize him for his work in the city attorney's office. And I know he has many colleagues here, and I'm assuming you're all here because of Hank. Do you want to stand up? And so sometimes you do things and you forget about, because in your mind you're doing your job. But the reality, Hank Morrison doing his job has made a difference in terms of the quality of life of Angelenos in the city of Los Angeles. And I wanted him to know that. So before I read off the therefores, I'd like to give Peter Echeverria a chance to say a few words on behalf of City Attorney Jimmy Hahn.
Thank you. You know, it's really impossible, and it's probably futile to attempt in the brief time that's available. In fact, I don't know that if we had all day, we could really appreciate all of the fine work and the importance of the work that Hank has done for the city of Los Angeles and for all of its residents. The spray can paint ordinance and the litigation that ensued from that he was involved in. He is our expert, and hopefully we will be able to fill those shoes as well on records, on city records, and the retention of records and the destruction of records and the rules that apply to them. I can go on and on about fire brush clearance requirements, etc. When we had a different or difficult assignment that really didn't fit within the other divisions in our office, the person we went to is Hank. And he handled those difficult assignments and handled them in a highly professional and competent way, and in a very unassuming way. I dare say most of you probably can think of situations where you worked with Hank and you say, oh, that's right, he was involved in that matter, which was of great substance and import to you. But Hank just goes on quietly, in a very dedicated and a very professional way, doing the job for the residents of Los Angeles. And I just want, on behalf of Jim Hahn, and I know to the extent he represents, of course, the city, on behalf of the residents of the city, to thank Hank for his outstanding contributions to the citizens of Los Angeles, serving as an assistant city attorney in all these 34 and a half years, and also for his friendship and comradeship and collegiality. He's right down the hall from me, has been for my umpteenth years in the office as well, and I've enjoyed all those years, and I've enjoyed your friendship, and we thank you.
Well, I wanted to take this moment to thank each of you council members, those I've worked with directly and those I've worked with on a kind of a casual basis. But I just wanted to say this. I think people in the legislature sometimes get a drubbing from various complaining sectors, but I wanted to say this, that in my time here, I have not seen a body of legislators who rises to the same level of integrity and competence and wisdom as I have seen of the council members. Each one of you is different, of course, and some of you have points of contention between each other, but I have seen the wisdom that has been exercised, and I have seen those who have come into the council and have had cloaked upon them the mantle of authority that wasn't there before. And it's been marvelous to observe, and I have been richly blessed by times of interaction. I have learned a lot just interacting with the council members and helping them in whatever way I could. So I wanted to compliment you and say you are doing a great job, and if people don't tell you that, they should tell you that more. Thank you very much.
Hank, prior to your departure, there is a couple of comments that want to be offered by council members. The chair recognizes Councilman Fuhr.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Hank, I just wanted to say, having had the opportunity to work closely with you, in the past 5 years, we've really been trying to push the envelope here in Los Angeles to protect our residents, given the gun violence problems that all of us are trying to confront. And you have been there at every single turn. What's been interesting about that process is that when we started doing this, most people felt that cities couldn't do much more than they had been doing, and that the state legislature had basically preempted the field. But you've been prepared time and time again to test those limits because you've known the importance of doing so when it comes to public safety here in Los Angeles. And for that spirit of trying to go to be as visionary and innovative as possible, for your willingness to test those limits, for your hard work, for the fact that I've known you to come here early and stay late when it's been necessary to accomplish the job, I wanted to say thank you very personally because we've had a long-standing relationship here, and I will miss you very much. What's great about Mr. Hernandez's presentation, among other things, is that between Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Echeverria, it's been made clear to residents of the city who are watching this on TV or here today how different and much better their lives are because of your service in particular. And that's a reward that you'll carry with you for the rest of your life, and I hope very proudly. Congratulations, Hank, and good luck in this next phase of your life.
Now it's my pleasure to basically read the last thereof of this certificate from the City of Los Angeles. Now therefore be it resolved that by the adoption of this resolution, the members of the City Council do hereby commend Henry Morris for his 34 years of dedication and outstanding achievements, and thank him and extend best wishes for a long and healthy, rewarding retirement. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, and Hank, on behalf of my colleagues, congratulations and Godspeed. Next, the chair would like to recognize Councilman Padilla for a presentation.
Your flock.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, no, this isn't my re-election committee, but sometimes we do travel in packs. Mr. President, colleagues, today's a very special day for me and I believe for this council and for the city. As many of us know, regardless of the issue, large or small, government can't do it alone. Certainly the city can't do it alone. And so we often lean on the community and the private sector for a lot of support. And today, what I and my office, my staff, wanted to do is just say thank you to the many, many people from Council District 7 who have stepped up to the plate, who have extended their hand of wanting to participate, wanting to give back, and have been very, very helpful to us in the course of the past year. About half of the folks here today, and there's hundreds that couldn't be here today, about half of the folks that are here today were very helpful in our annual holiday gift drive. Through their help, through their efforts, we were able to hand out 7,000 toys to needy children in Council District 7 this last year in more than 11 locations throughout the Council District. But in addition to that, the folks standing behind me have been there when we've called upon them and have been there even when we didn't call upon them, helping in neighborhood cleanups and community events, donating time, energy, money, food, painting over graffiti, you name it. There's a lot going on in Council District 7 and a lot of community involvement trying to improve the community. And these folks have really stepped up to the plate to give of their time and of their resources to help every single one of our efforts be successful. I do want to recognize, at least from the RSVP list, of who I think is here, not the entire list of folks who wanted to congratulate, but we had a nice reception upstairs prior to the council meeting where they received certificates of appreciation on behalf of the city, as well as our partner in the state of California, Assemblyman Tony Cardenas. And those folks include, from our holiday gift drive, Motor Coach USA, who's located in Sylmar in the 7th Council District, Kevin Brunk, the developer of the newest and the last EDD building in California, also in the Council District, the LAPD Toy Fund, LA Shares, the legendary Burt Ball, Rich Roach from Pacific Bell, Primerica, the Sam's Club Foundation, and SRO Housing. Folks who, in addition to December, were really helpful and active throughout the year include our friends over at Black and White Garage, Burrito King, El Gallo Giro, Esther's Bakery, Jack in the Box, the Panorama Mall, which continues to succeed and grow, the Silmar Graffiti Busters, who pour a lot of sweat to removing that graffiti, Walmart, and really, there's dozens and dozens more to name, others that were not able to participate today, but we wanted to, as we were taught in kindergarten and taught by our mothers, whenever there's a good deed and you get some help, just say thank you. And as much as we get thanked in my office for helping the community, we need to thank all of you for helping us shine and look good. So thank you, and I think we might have a little bit of time if anybody wants to say a few words. Or if you're all shy, we'll just go in the back and take some pictures. We had a good time upstairs, and so we'll continue the coffee and the laughing. But thank you, Mr. President, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. Council members, we are expecting a quorum today. However, we need one for a quorum, and the... look at this. Terrific. Now we do have a quorum. Very good. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll?
Burnson, Check, Fiora, Galanter, Hernandez, Holden, Miskowski, Pacheco, Padilla, Ridley, Thomas, Florence, Wax, Walters, Ferraro. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Terrific. First item of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Without objection, the minutes are approved.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Without objection, those are approved also. Next item.
Item number 1 is the item notice for public hearing. It's a TEFRA hearing and a resolution. TEFRA hearing is required to go first.
Okay. I have no speakers cards. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on item number 1 on the regular agenda? Okay, seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Is there any council member that wishes to speak on this item? If not, we are going to open the roll. Mr. Clerk, open the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That item is approved. Next item.
Items number 2 through 7 on the regular agenda are items for which public hearings have been held.
Okay. Is there any council member that wishes to speak on items 2 through 7? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, would you open the roll on those items and tabulate the vote?
10 ayes.
Those items are approved. Next.
Items number 8 through 12 on the regular agenda are items for which public hearings have not been held.
Mr. President, could we be forthwith on item 7?
Forthwith on item 7. Okay. We do have items number 8 through 12 before us. Is there any council member that wishes to be heard on items 8 through 12? Okay. We'll call item 12 special. We'll take that next. We have a card on 10. We will call that special. So, Mr. Clerk, I believe we have 7, 8, 9, and 11 before us. Open the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Those items are approved. Okay.
Item number 13 on the continuation agenda is also a TEFRA hearing and resolutions. Hearing is required to be conducted first.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to be heard on item number 13 on the continuation agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any council member that wishes to be heard on item number 13? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, would you open the roll and tabulate the vote?
10 ayes.
That item is approved. Next.
Item number 14 on the continuation agenda, a motion is required from the floor inasmuch as there's two on one file, a Public Safety Committee report submitted without recommendation, and an amending motion.
Okay. That item is called special by Mrs. Chick. Okay. Next item.
Mr. President, did you wish to conduct the special meeting at this time?
Why don't we go back to item 7 quickly, and why don't we finish the regular agenda?
Okay, item number 10 was called special.
Item 10. Melrose Larry Green.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Melrose Larry Green. Well, here we go again. Here we go. You can get a quorum at 10:40. Now, this is the third time in the last week that I've made this speech. Maybe I should just record it and leave you a videotape. These meetings are supposed to start at 10 a.m. Now, if a school teacher or a bus driver or a garbage man in the city of L.A. who's supposed to start work at 8 o'clock popped in at 8:45 or 10 to 9 day after day, they'd be fired. But you're not accountable to anybody. So why don't we start these meetings at 9:15, as I say, and then you'll get here by 10 o'clock. Item number 10 is a motion relative to special events, quote unquote, to be held in the various council districts. Now look, you've been for years waiving fees on special events. Now I'm not against waiving fees on special events for areas like Pico Union or East LA or South Central where people can't afford the fees, costs, and requirements except insurance. But what about $5,705 waived for the LPGA tournament? Golfers got money, rich people play golf. What about the Los Feliz Village Street Fair, $578? This adds up. Temple Judea, hey, I'm Jewish. I know that all these people have money in the temples. And on and on and on. Oh, the homeless health care, that's okay. West Side Jewish Community Center annual snow day, that was even in the past. That's last week, $578. These add up. Nobody waives my parking tickets. Nobody waives my tickets when I get a ticket for not moving my car at 8 a.m. Why are we waiving all these costs? How many of you have done during this year? How much money has been waived in the past year? Melrose Larry Green would like to know that. Thanks, folks. I'm Melrose Larry Green.
That was Melrose Larry Green. Mr. Clerk, would you open the roll on this item? Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That item is approved forthwith. In fact, let us send forthwith all the items today. Next item, I believe, is item 12.
Item number 12 called special by Councilmember Fuhrer.
Mr. Fuhrer, item number 12.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to call to our attention, colleagues, a real opportunity that we have if we are able to work successfully with the state legislature to change the rules regarding the sale of electricity. We know about the crisis that's statewide, and we also know about the success of our own Department of Water and Power and the city leadership in insulating residents of Los Angeles, to some degree at least, from the problems caused by the statewide electrical crisis. One of the deficiencies of the state deregulation scheme when it was adopted was the following. It precluded local municipal power generators like the Water and Power Department from selling to jurisdictions outside of the city, school districts, hospitals, neighboring cities, without at the same time opening up the boundaries of that city to competition, to deregulation. The measure in item 12 recommends that we pursue state legislation that would enable our Department of Water and Power to sell to neighboring jurisdictions, to contract with a hospital, a school district, or a city, without at the same time opening up the city to the kind of competition that deregulation has caused that has eroded the economy of the state of California. It would be a win for everybody. On the one hand, the taxpayers of the city of Los Angeles would benefit, because now, while Water and Power contributes power to the wholesale grid, it does so at rates that are lower than we could charge the neighboring jurisdictions, hospitals, and schools. On the other hand, if you are a potential recipient of our power, those same jurisdictions, you'd benefit a lot, because the rate the city would charge would be far less than the rate on the unregulated market we currently have, and it would be much more stable. They would know for sure that pursuant to contract, they could rely on power, not on the ad hoc exigencies of the grid. So I urge colleagues that we unanimously adopt this resolution in item 12 and send a strong message to the state legislature and the governor that this would be a very positive change in the structure of our regulatory system regarding electricity in the state of California, a change that everybody could win from, and indeed there'd be no losers at all.
Thank you, Mr. Fuhr. Is there any other council member? Yes, Mr. Hernandez. Chair recognizes Mr. Hernandez.
On the therefore, I just want a little explanation of the second item that says cities neighboring the city of Los Angeles without allowing, and it uses the word without allowing other energy service providers or utilities to serve DWP customers. I just want to have some clarity on what that means. because
If I might, Mr. Hernandez.
Currently, I know we purchase power. We also have the right to purchase power, particularly if it could be sold to us cheaper than what we're purchasing. That's not the situation right now, but right now we can do that.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to explain before, let me try to do it better,
Yeah.
is under the current deregulation scheme, if the city of Los Angeles were to sell to an outside entity, we would also have to agree to open up our boundaries to a deregulated market where others could compete to sell electricity to our residents here. And what this motion proposes is a resolution that would change state law so that we could sell without at the same time having to endure the problem of having Edison or others come into the city of Los Angeles competing for our customers. Mr. Deaton,
Right,
is that
no,
a
and
fair
I
explanation?
understood that. I understand that part.
Yeah.
And today, that makes all the sense in the world. The question I'm asking, what happened, let's say it was reversed, which could have been the situation if everybody else, what they thought was going to happen would have happened. Then we're saying that our customers should be saddled with the higher rates if DWP had higher rates than other utilities, right?
What we're saying is,
I just want to answer, because I know in a competitive environment, at one time we were talking about who provided the lower rates.
right, I don't know, Mr. Deaton.
Currently, the current state law on this allows this body and the mayor to make that decision. If at some point the opening up the DWP or the City of Los Angeles' service area to outside competition is appropriate, then what existing state law allows is, as I said, the mayor and city council to do this, as opposed to it being triggered by an action that's proposed under this motion. Quite frankly, this allows the city under, and I would propose, my understanding would be that the city, it would be an option for the city under some contractual arrangement with either the county or the school district or others to have a reciprocal agreement that we would provide the power and at a certain cost and certain kinds of reliability. This does not mandate it on us, but on the other hand, it doesn't mandate us to open up our service area. There may be a time, and I agree with you, Mr. Hernandez, this
Could change.
This could change, and I think it will change. There's no doubt in my mind it will change. When it will change, I'm not sure.
But as it does, it gives us the control to make the decision for the
Control
residents who
remains
elect
with
us.
you,
Okay.
and which is as I read the newspapers, there's a rather large lineup people of who was responsible for this, but nonetheless, whoever was, it is clearly it is left with this body.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other council member that wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, would you open the roll and tabulate the vote?
10 eyes.
10 ayes, thank you. Forthwith on that item also. Next.
Item number 14, there's two on one file. A motion is required from the floor. It was called special by Councilmember Scheer.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Chick.
Yes, Mr. President, if you would hold my time, I'd like city staff to come to the table. Oh. You know, the report here before us is fairly sparse in terms of going backwards and giving the council a really complete history of a very long and complex project funded by a multi-million dollar bond measure approved in 1992 by the public, Prop M, to improve our 911 systems. And colleagues, I'm painfully aware that part of what we have before us is a report asking for proper payment to be made to a city contractor who was instructed to proceed with work before a discussion of the changes, what they were, why they were being recommended, and what the cost was brought to the full council for our approval. So I want to read off some questions that I think staff needs to address, and then probably it will be necessary, I'll push my button again, to make my comments. I'd like to hear a discussion of why and when the decision was made to switch from a customized system to off-the-shelf. Did you ever come back to council with a discussion of just looking at these changes and why and what the cost was, for instance, to committee before, and I mean before the date of this report that's before us? I'd like to know when the technology changed. I'd also like to hear how it is that LAPD was having TRW continue the work before you got our sign-off and approval. I'd also like to hear what's involved in matching the product to how LAPD normally performs these functions, and why you are confident that LAPD can and will make the changes and how it operates to fit the way the off-the-shelf system operates. What discussion and plans have you made for dollars that will be necessary for the training? And I believe those are primarily, but in the discussion of why you made the decision to change, what are the advantages and what are the potential disadvantages?
Good morning, council members. Council member Chick, I am Roger Ham. I'm the CIO and Deputy Chief in charge of technology for the LAPD. This goes back to the time, council member Chick, when you were chair of the Public Safety Committee. One of your key goals was to have the latest technology into these communication centers. Many of you know that to develop a project of this scope and magnitude takes 10 years in the making. From the time the bond is originally acquired to the time the facilities are built to the time the systems are installed is a 10-year project. If you many times build a custom system, you basically stand still while technology moves on. Observing that, during Phase 8 work, which was the pre-implementation design phase of work, which was that $5.5 million phase before this, we brought forward to the Technical Steering Committee a proposal to go to a commercially off-the-shelf software which would continually grow and move while we're developing this project, because it would be under development by a vendor who specialized in that software and would not be being developed by our own staff. We had never planned originally to replace the CAD system, which was the heart of the communication center. However, as you can imagine, with technology moving rapidly ahead, to place a 1980s vintage CAD system in the communications center would not be proper, nor would it be prudent. Upon your leadership asking us for that latest technology, we believed the best way to obtain that, because of obviously issues of hiring the best and brightest people in ITA and the LAPD, that we could not develop that on the inside. The COTS solution also gave us that advantage. We also believe it's an advantage to have somebody else out there in the industry that uses that software. We're not looking at designing something without a plan in mind, but this way you can test drive the software. You can see what it is before you use it. I truly believe that you don't go out in the industry to develop Microsoft Windows when you can go buy it off the shelf for a very inexpensive fee. We have been able to, during this contract period, because of the savings that we would have to pay for the integration of the old 1980 style software that we're currently using in the old communications center, that amount of money is what will pay the extra work that it takes TRW to analyze, design, and work on interfacing that. And at the same time, that's why we are within budget. We are within the scope of the project, and we are on time with the project. And that is one thing that would not be guaranteed with a custom solution. And as many of us know, I believe the fact is 84% of all major technology projects fail because they're custom solutions and you never get to implementation. The last reason we went to a COTS solution was we were trying to solve the dispatcher attrition rate that is in our communications center. The PSRs that work as dispatchers have a tremendous burden handling all the 911 calls. When you're able to see new software that is the latest technology that reduces the keystrokes and allows the communications operators to have a more visual impact of what the field is doing, and having that information, such as in a customer relations management system, which we basically are, is a 911 center relating to our customers, which are the constituents of Los Angeles, that will improve our ability to keep and train good people. The other thing is, it gives them another group of people, other cities that will use similar software. They can go to user group meetings, and then they will be able to develop skills and really keep up to date on the latest technology. We really believe that we have to change the business rules. And I believe, Councilmember Chick, you were very instrumental in saying LAPD has to change the way we do business. And truly, that vision of yours is important because we do have to change the way. We're doing business the way we were doing it in 1950, and we can't do that anymore. We have to come in and do business in the year 2001. We believe by letting outside vendors who are competitors in the marketplace set that bar, that we will come in with that software that can be delivered on time, and that we will then be able to have better training for our people. And the training issue is critical because we know there will be retraining of the staff, but what we want to do is be able to train them easier than we can now, because we know the training that we currently do is really, is not very effective. We're not very successful at getting a number of new PSRs through the system. This was another aspect of that. And I believe that going forward with that process opens us up for future upgrades, opens us up for integration into new systems. And I know that has always been a concern of yours, is do we build this system one time and we're going to be back at the taxpayer asking them for this big chunk of money 5 years down the road? Well, the good news is, with systems of these major vendors who are selling to other major cities, these vendors have given us an avenue to gain new technology without big dollar increases for the taxpayer. And that was our goal, to try to see how we could continue along the way keeping these centers state-of-the-art in the next years to come and not put a major burden on the general fund or have to go back out for another bond issue.
Thank you, sir. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Miskowski.
I thank Ms. Chick for calling this special and raising the issue actually Wednesday, because in fact this is a case that has a very long life. It has a long history in its earlier evolution, and I appreciate that we've had the chance to focus on it as opposed to just processing another amendment. I think has been presented by Mr. Ham, we have had an interesting evolution in this city. We in the city, and maybe many other entities like the city, big governments who are going in for brand new major technology projects over the last 10, 15 years, usually said, we are so large and we have such a need and we know so well what our need is that we're going to define and design something ourselves. Off the shelf doesn't work. We can do better. We can really tailor something. And we've learned the lesson, as I think a whole lot of others has, that if you don't use off the shelf, you're going to pin yourself in, limit your capabilities, because off the shelf is going to be limited. Excuse me, not off the shelf, it's going to be limited. Whereas if you take off the shelf, particularly today, when there is more compatibility that anything off the shelf is able to be integrated, able to be built on, there is a better understanding in the whole industry to not build something with limitations in it. And so I think that by changing this direction at this time is going to give us greater flexibility, greater opportunity, and is appropriate. And generally, although a larger cost now, a much larger savings down the road and compatibility with something that can be integrated in the long term. So I think it was the right decision. We are still on time and on budget within the scope of the contract, and I think we should move forward expeditiously.
Thank you, Councilwoman. The chair recognizes Councilman Hernandez.
Mr. President, members of the council, I'm going to make some general comments about the bureaucracy itself. And when I say the bureaucracy, I don't mean it in a negative. But as we try and make our projects perfect, we basically come up with budgets. And then every time we realize our project's not perfect, the budget changes. And as that budget changes, what we look at is this is what the voters said we could spend, and it looks to the voters like we're spending as much as we can spend. And the question is efficiency, the question is timeliness, and the question is doing the best program you can. And I'm just trying to, the other day I was sitting with the mayor and he said, you know, one of our problems with our parks is we want them to be perfect. And when we're trying to make them perfect, the reality is the kids can't play in them. And the question becomes, what is our role? And so sometimes, because the voters said you could have $285 million to develop this system, we're sitting there saying, how do we spend $285 million? So when I hear the word, we're under budget, the reality is what we originally said we were going to put in place at this dollar figure has changed. And what we originally said we were going to put in place has not been put in place, and the budget has changed. And so I'm just trying to explain it because my frustration, and maybe it's kind of one of the symptoms of term limits, is I'm not going to be here. I was here when we proposed it to the voters. I was here when the voters passed it. I was here when we started planning it. I'm just not going to be here when it's operating. And I'm hoping that we will take that into account, because there has to come a point when we get it done and have it operating, and the quicker that point comes and the least expensive it is I think what the goal should be.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Schick.
Yes, it's clear that TRW is owed money and needs to be paid. But in my opinion, the city has once again made very costly mistakes. Mr. Ham, thank you for giving me the credit for a vision about how we need to move an antiquated LAPD into the 21st century. I didn't hear my question answered, however, about how it is that you and your staff and the LAPD never came to the council in advance to make these discussions with us and to ask for our approval. And now we have incurred a debt with a responsible department who should not be left holding the bag. But I will tell you, I am not a yes vote today, because I don't want my name associated with this. You also didn't answer the question, when did the technology change? And if what you're saying is the reason that LAPD is making the change to off the shelf is because at least a year and a half ago, when I last chaired that committee, I asked the question, are we sure we're absolutely acquiring the best state-of-the-art that's available? And it was that question from me that got somebody in LAPD to think, gee, we better step back and take a look if there's something better. That's frightening to me. We have spent $11 million so far doing a needs assessment of what it is that we need in the department. And now we're moving forward with another $5 million. I have to think that some of that $11 million that was spent already was wasted. That we were going in another direction, and because a council member asked, is this the best, we turned to look at what was off the shelf. But I've been told that the off-the-shelf technology has been available since around 1997. LAPD started looking at it in 2000 because of my question, is what I heard from your staff to my staff. So not only do I feel we didn't know about it in the proper way and time, I think that some of that $11 million was not well spent, and I have grave concerns about the training that's going to be needed to match up changing how we do things to how the off-the-shelf program is going to dictate things be done. And colleagues, everywhere we look in the city, when we have taken on big technology and communication systems projects, we run into incredible problems. And one example, near at hand, is our Prima purchasing system. We did off-the-shelf in that, and we had, I don't even know what the final number is in terms of fixes that had to be initiated because, in effect, we had to customize the off-the-shelf to fit how the city does things. And we all know that it is difficult to change the paradigm, to change the way government has been doing things for a long time. And quite frankly, I think LAPD is a department that's extremely resistant to change. So the answer that you gave was not satisfactory to me to inspire confidence that at least if you've decided this is the way to go, that you have made plans for the kind of training that's going to be needed, that you've talked about the costs of that training. And finally, let me say that I find it insulting for people to come in here and tell us, don't worry, we're on budget. We're talking about a $5 million increase. And while that might be within the bond dollars, one of the reasons we have the money is because we're moving slowly over a decade, at least a decade before we're finished, and we're collecting interest on the people's money. And we have more in bond money than we originally asked for. So we have the luxury of not worrying about $5 million increases? I don't think so. I'm not arguing that this should be turned down today because I don't know what we do about meeting the payments that we owe to TRW. But I cannot, in good conscience, support this.
Thank you, Councilwoman. The chair recognizes Councilman Ridley Thomas.
Mr. President, members of the council, perhaps it could be clarified as to whether or not this is a time-sensitive matter such that it can't be continued.
There is no time limit.
Well, I wonder if the parties who are recommending that we adopt this feel as though they have adequately briefed members of the council such that we can move forward with confidence. That was a question.
Just if I can make a point of order to answer a question. The one of the time issues is that work has been ongoing by the contractor since April without a contract. So there is a sense of commitment on services provided, and
I'm not sure. Does that address my question?
well, I'm not sure if Mr. Ham can answer any discussions he's had with the contractors to whether or not they are able to continue without a certification.
No, I'm speaking to the adequacy of the briefing of the members, Ms. Mizakowski, such that we would have comfort with supporting this. It seems that one colleague has raised rather substantial questions about proceeding, And I wonder if each member of the council were to be queried, could they answer with the fullness of confidence that this is the way in which we ought to vote, that is, affirmatively?
Council member, all of our issues have been brought before a technical steering committee that represents a cross-section of our departments that was formed by this council.
Sir, the question
to-
still stands before you. Have members of the council been adequately briefed in your view such that you feel as though we can vote in good conscience? Have you, let me be more direct, done so?
Personally, I have not briefed each one of you individually.
Does the matter rise to the level of significance such that you think it might be appropriate to cause that to happen?
Up until this time, I did not believe it did rise to that significance.
Might you be of the view that it has risen to that level at this point?
I can see there is some issues at this point.
Do you think if you had the benefit of a briefing, those issues could be more adequately or properly explained than what this forum will permit?
I would say I could probably answer any question today so that work will continue to proceed and we will not fall off schedule. If a briefing is necessary, we may want to poll the council members to ask them, because I don't know how they feel in this. The Technical Steering Committee has filed continual reports on the progress of this program, and it has continued to be on target and on budget and well within guidelines. I would like to respond to one question Councilmember Chick had about issues that took place in 1997. Many of you may know I am the CIO who was brought in to do and implement the technology for LAPD. I did not come on until the end of 1998. So much of that change is probably due to my part of trying to direct changes in this and keep this project on time, on budget, and successful. If the council members feel they need a briefing, I and my staff, as well as the members of the Technical Steering Committee, which represent the Chief Legislative Analyst, the City Engineer, the General Manager of ITA, the Chief of Police, and the ORS Office, will gladly do so. We will make a presentation to each of you individually, if that would be so desired.
Thank you, Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Mr. President, just a question to you. It seems to me, given the significance of the matter and the length of time that it's taking to dispose of it, a briefing to the extent that council members so desire would be in order so that we can make a good decision.
And thank you, Mr. Ridley Thomas. Okay, now batting cleanup, Mr. Deaton.
Well, I think that very well that briefings would be appropriate. However, I think for contractual reasons and the need to move ahead with the project, I would recommend that you approve this today and that we go around and brief you on the status of the report, et cetera, over the next few weeks. I think that we have, for a variety of reasons, and maybe not all good, had a long time getting here, but I think that it is important that you move ahead today.
Thank you, Mr. Deaton. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Miskowski.
I was just going to make the same point that Mr. Deaton did. Again, we have contractual obligations. Work has been performed. There are a lot of steps yet to come and contracts yet to be looked at in this, and I think a full briefing of the council to bring everyone up to date from where we are since 1996, how it has evolved, what the previous 8 amendments dealt with, and where we will go in the future in terms of new RFPs, in terms of real providing of the materials. That's most timely, most appropriate, but I think this is work done, and we should go ahead and approve the contract.
Thank you, Councilwoman. The chair recognizes Councilman Ridley Thomas for a second time.
Prior to Ms. Miskowski's last remarks, I was going to say of the remarks made by the previous speaker that I hope that that wasn't designed to overcome our unreadiness, because I think my point is made. It is my view that to call for a vote may be inadvisable. If it is the collective wisdom of those who are here to move forward, everyone has a right to exercise his or her own point of view when they press their button. I think it is not a good thing to have unreadiness when we are moving as much in the way of resources as this calls for, particularly in the area of technology, where we have had repeated problems, police, fire, and otherwise. And to the extent that a claim is being made that we ought to have confidence about the technological direction of the department, absent causing that confidence to be felt by those who have to make these decisions, in my view, is a calculated error. That's why I posed the question, would it be better to cause people to have a higher degree of comfort than what is being evidenced today? I don't know what it means to lock yourself into a contract and then try to work through it on the other side. It seems to me that there's something slightly backwards potentially about that. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Ridley Thomas. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Chick.
Mr. Deaton, is there a way, because I'm not aware of dollars, amounts that are owed, I would assume it's not the full $5 million. Is there a way to make a responsible and good corporate citizen and a good vendor to the city, the company that's owed money, whole, at least up to the present, or and then hold the rest of this? You know, I am concerned about contract and liability issues of a city not paying, but my position is firm today for myself in terms of not being comfortable voting for the whole thing that's before us. And maybe that's a question to the city attorney.
I think so. You have a situation where you don't have a contract, you have people who have worked, and a certain amount is owed, and without
Do we know what's owed, Mr. Ham?
Yes, we do. Approximately $3.9 million is currently owed.
I'm speechless.
Chair recognizes Councilman Fewer.
Let me understand exactly where we are for right now. We owe about $4 million. The amendment before us is 5.26. Difference about $1.25 million. The difference would be attributed to work taking place over what period of time?
Work that'll be taking place between now and May would be the answer.
All right. If we chose to freeze the balance of the contract, pay 3.9, freeze the balance, precisely what implications does that have for getting the call centers up in a timely way?
Well, first of all, that will cause a delay because obviously we're paying them for work that was already done. They did that in good faith. They worked with us to help.
No, forget the good faith part, because the question, if it makes any, the question is not whether we pay them for that which they did in good faith. No choice. Got to pay them. The question is what to do moving forward. As I'm trying to sort out what makes sense for me as I'm voting on this, a couple thoughts come to mind, which is why I'm asking the questions. You can help me out as we sort through this. The last thing I want to do is slow down this process further. We have to get the systems up, period. We are already 4/5 of the way through, 80% of the way through TRW's commitment to us. If we were to say, let's pause for a second and reevaluate the balance, we would be in the position, you're saying, I think, of the following. It slows down the process by whatever length of time we delay the evaluation of it. But secondly, were we to choose a different vendor with a different technological approach, it also has implications for what we already spent, right?
Not necessarily.
All right, explain that.
We have gone out on the open market and looked at all of the best-of-breed vendors to build these systems. We have selected them. We are now in the final phases of writing. The next phase contracts are a firm fixed price. That's why we have to have definable specifications. That is the work TRW is doing. We haven't issued the next...
TRW is doing the specs for the next go-around, and that's the $1.25 million that's left.
Absolutely. And if we don't do those specs, every day that goes on, we fall off each day off of the timetable.
For what if the council were to choose, I am clearly not advocating for this, but I understand it. If the council were to choose to say, stop, pay them, reevaluate the specs that are being put together now, what is the best result that could follow from that?
I don't see that there would be any advantage or any positive results if we did not believe there was a solution that would be cheaper, better, faster to install. We are in the midst of doing all of those things, and we believe we have the best solution, we have the best technology, and the best implementation plan.
Now, let me pause. I think that, without presuming too much, that the spirit of some of Ms. Chick's questions is the council hasn't been presented with choices that lead us to the conclusion that this is the best efficient, the best approach that we could be pursuing here. And the question is, would it be a good time for us to assess that? You're saying it's awfully late in the day for us to do that. And I guess my question boils down to this. Is TRW doing specs for the next step in this process that would be essentially the same if performed by somebody else? Is the technology that we're seeking more or less agreed upon so that the question who draws the specs is less relevant than who does the next step of building it?
I think the knowledge that TRW has gained in working with the LAPD and the City of Los Angeles is probably a monumental amount of knowledge that is not easily gained. Our intent was to present council with the options and the associated costs once those were defined, and that is the Phase 11 work that's due to come up. We would bring that back.
TRW's job is to say you can choose this, this, or this.
And this is the recommendation based on the following fit with the LAPD and with the City of Los Angeles. The council has the right at that time to say, stop, don't go forward, we want you to go rebid it, we think that's too much money to spend. You have that right at that time. But the issue was, how do you develop the complexity of, how do you analyze the complexity of these systems and make a rational decision on which was the best system and had the most favored fit for the City of Los Angeles. And our key concern has always been, we want these systems to be successful, and the City of Los Angeles has not had that advantage in the past, but on these systems, we are going to be successful and can deliver on our promise.
Thank you, Mr. Fuhrer. The chair recognizes Councilman Ridley Thomas for a third time.
I heard the CIO of the police department make reference to the point that the issues involved are large, and I can't recall the exact words you used, but I think the intent was that the gargantuan nature of them is perhaps tough to grasp. Now, I suspect we are capable of grasping that if it had been presented in such a way that we can have confidence about what progress is being made, if in fact it is being made. I want to be clear about my unreadiness. It is related to the fact that we have misfired in several instances with respect to resources allocated and expended in the area of technology in several departments. I haven't been able to overcome that issue, nor has anyone caused me to by virtue of their proactive positioning of this issue in particular. I'm trying to say this in several different ways. I don't know if the message is getting across, but if it hasn't, Mr. President, how many times have I spoken? 3? Well, if the message hasn't gotten across yet, I'll speak again.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Chick.
Brief question. Because I don't think until you just explained, Mr. Ham, what is the next step in terms of this work TRW is doing, and then they're going to come back, and then we're going to have decisions to make about the details of moving forward on the system. So in terms of the $11 million we've spent already, what was that money for? Because the $5 million is to finish an assessment of which off-the-shelf product to use, which off-the-shelf system to use. And then TRW or you, LAPD, will come back to us. Is that right? Okay. What was done before this? Before this $5 million, for the first $11 million?
Thank you, Councilmember. Yes, let me go over the phases. Phase 1 was a needs analysis. Phase 2 was functional requirements.
But could you put dollars with it?
Yes. Originally, phases 1 through 7 were $5.8 million. And those phases included needs analysis, functional requirements, functional design, conceptual design, detailed design, building construction documents, system procurement. That took us to Phase 8. Phase 8 was pre-implementation design services. And by the way...
But now we've switched approaches from customized to off-the-shelf. So remember I asked, what about that first $11 million? And was it all spent wisely? Or was some of it that we were going in this direction, spending money going in this direction? And then we said, and then Councilmember Chick asked, are we really using the best? And then we switched and decided, no, we're not. Since about 3 years ago, there's been better stuff out there off the shelf. And now another $5 million because we're making this veer.
Well, I have to say, I do not consider any of the money wasted. I believe in the old carpenter's rule, measure twice, cut once. I don't think you can go without a good plan. And I can say with reassurance to everyone here on the council that by dealing with TRW, we have been able to look at all the options. And when you think of 911 and when you think of the fact success is measured in seconds, whether you apprehend a criminal or save the life of somebody, this is the technology that is going to have to do that. We have studied
$11 million and how many years?
Well, $11 million, the bond was approved in 1992. Okay. And as you can see, we have already spent $180 million. We have 2 communication centers that are world-class and are on their way to being finished, one in the Metro Center and one out in the Valley. That is part of the $180 million. We have also, so that we get the record straight, we have completed $21 million of deploying handheld radios. We developed an interim voice radio system for $2.8 million. All of these are successful projects. A new voice backbone radio system for $65 million, which at the end of the spring we will be turning on. A successful mobile data system at $23 million, which has been written up in a number of magazines for being successful. An interim backup 911 system for $2.5 million, and two communication dispatch centers for $42 million, all which have been on time and on budget.
Is there any other council member that wishes to speak at this time? Okay. What we have before us is, Mr. Clerk?
There's a motion required. There's a Public Safety Committee report submitted without recommendation, and then there's an amending motion put forward by Councilmember Miskowski.
Okay. Councilwoman?
Chair, with the, what we had forgotten last time we discussed this, which was the most favored nation clause that had been negotiated by the Police Commission member, Dean Hansel, on this contract.
Okay. So the item is before us. Mr. Clerk, open the roll. Tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 2 noes.
That item is approved. Forthwith. Next item.
Do you wish to take up the special agenda item at this time?
I think that would be appropriate. We're going to recess the regular meeting for the moment, and we're going to call the special meeting to order. Call the roll.
Burnson, Chick, Fuhrer, Galanter, Hernandez, Holden, Miskowski, Pacheco, Padilla, Ridley, Thomas, Sworn, Schwartz, Walters, Farrell, 11 members present and quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. We do have, I believe, one item of business on this agenda, Mr. Clerk.
Yes. Special agenda item number 1 is the item notice for public hearing. There are 2 on one file, so a motion is required from the floor. A majority and minority Planning and Land Use Management Committee report.
Okay. We do have individuals that want to speak on this item. That'd be fine. Do we have staff here? Do we have staff for this item? Here we go, Mr. Burnson. Chairman of the committee, in regards to the majority report, requests a staff report, sir, so if you could proceed, and then we will proceed with council discussion. I think what we'll do is have the staff report, then public comment, then the council
Good.
discussion.
I just want to make sure we did have public comment.
Yes. Go right
Council
ahead, sir.
members, my name is Garden Chang, Planning Department, Division of Land. The subject request was granted and approval for 2 2 lots. The decision was appealed to the Area Planning Commission. Because of a split vote, it was deemed fair to act. It was again appealed to the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. There was a split vote. There's a majority report in front of you and a minority report in front of you. The majority report is to deny the appeal and approve or sustain the action of the advisory agency for 2 lots. The subject request is consistent with what is referred to as the community plan and is also consistent with the Subdivision Map Act and complies with all the findings for approval.
Thank you, sir. The chair recognizes Councilman Burnson.
Yes, members of the council, this was an appeal that was filed by the CLA on behalf of the 13th Council District. Unfortunately, the majority of the committee, including myself, felt that being as the community plan provided for the density that was provided here, which was R1 5,000 square foot lots, and this particular parcel, if divided, would provide for one which I believe was about 18,000 square feet, and the other 7,000 square feet, was a flag lot. There were a number of flag lots in the area, including next door to this particular parcel, and we felt that there was no basis that we could legally defend for denial, being as the community plan provided for it. There was a precedent for it. It was merely adding 1 lot. They could have already built 2 houses on this lot because the size of the lot would have permitted it, but it would have discouraged home ownership of the particular property as far as the occupants of the homes were concerned. So in the interest, we felt it was in the best interest to deny this appeal, and that was the majority report, and I would so move.
Thank you, Mr. Burnson. I have some individuals that would like to be heard, so if the following persons could please line up behind the podium in the following order: Lee Ambers, Sandra Figueroa Villa, and Robin Amusin.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Lee Ambers. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, who is the property owner. It is his desire to subdivide this into 2 parcels, build a second house, and then to go ahead and sell both properties. This would keep pride of ownership in the area. It is consistent with the master plan, as was determined by the advisory agency, and is consistent with the State Subdivision Act. Up and down the street, there are a host of properties that have gone through this process and have successfully built out their properties. And we are not initiating a new precedent for the community. We are following what has already been resolved. And we urge that the council approve the project and deny the appeal.
Thank you, sir. Sandra Figueroa Villa.
My name is Sandra Figueroa Villa, and I live at 4623 Mont Eagle Place, which is the property right behind the property on Tolan Way. I represent myself and approximately over 200 residents in the neighborhood around the Tolan Way site that are opposing the building, the subdivision of the property. Our issue is preserving the quality of life from further densification through development. When I bought my house, I thought that the Northeast Plan would protect my neighborhood. However, we are finding out now that it doesn't. Although the Plum Committee's majority report is recommending denying the appeal because of the precedent set by other flag lots in the area. These houses were built before the plan, and as I understand it, were the reason that the community got involved and developed this plan. Therefore, I am here to ask the council to adopt the minority report and grant the appeal filed by the CLA and supported by Council Member Mike Hernandez.
Thank you, ma'am. Robin Amusin.
Thank you. I'm Robin Amison. I'm also a neighbor in the area. I live at 4627 Mont Eagle Place. The neighborhood is a hillside development where the street, Tolan Way, actually goes from El Paso all the way around the hill back to El Paso. Now, there are 6 developed lots where we have flag lots on this street, but that is a minimum amount of the properties, which, as Mrs. Figueroa mentioned, was done before the CPAC Commission went through. We'd like to see this stopped. We don't want to see this over-densification continued. We're having many problems in the area. The streets have not been repaved since 1927. We believe the intent and the spirit of the Northeast Plan, as developed from the CPAC study, would stop these flag lot developments and preserve the character of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other person in the audience that wants to be heard under public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, the public comment period will be closed. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Miskowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Although we're bringing today a split recommendation, a majority and minority report from the Planning and Land Use Management Committee, there really is agreement, but the agreement is one of the agreement is one of process. The people who spoke today in opposition to this parcel map generally all live above on a mountaintop, the top of the hill, where there are generally larger lots and generally no lot splits. They overlook this area, which is on a different street below them, Tolan, and that is the one that even on a map that was presented to us where there were 13 lots on Tolan Way in the vicinity of this property, 6 of those 13 already had a lot split, very similar to this. So under the plan, which says this is low density, but low density is R1 to RE9, this property had originally been under an application for 3 different lots. The planning department said, no, 3 is not compatible, 3 is not consistent. 2 is, 1 at 15,000, 1 at 7,000. But, so that's why the majority report recommended the approval of the parcel map. It's consistent with the plan. It's consistent with the lowest density in the plan for this property. It's clearly consistent with the zone and actually creating larger lots than the zone allows. But then we went beyond that and said, let's look at the compatibility, make sure there's not a house that gets built here that's too high and obscures the view, so we have a covenant agreeing to a low-level house. we have, as I say, only the 2 lots instead of the 3. And then we also ask that next week, the Plum Committee consider a report from the Planning Department on whether or not there should be rollbacks of zoning, rollbacks in the plan, so that those lots that are generally larger, particularly those on Mount Eagle Place, in maybe the 20 to 30,000 square foot range, be preserved by specifically changing the plan to accommodate that layout and that existing community pattern. So we are asking that. I know Mr. Hernandez is working on a motion that I have agreed to second to do that as well for the whole area. But given what was before us today, given the plan, which did preserve low density, but low density here was equated with R1 to RE9, and we are going to have just 2 lots here that are going to be compatible with that, not 3. But I think the area does deserve further investigation to determine whether or not there should be an additional adjustment under the plan to preserve what these people have, particularly on the upper street area.
Thank you, Councilwoman. The chair recognizes Councilman Hernandez.
Mr. Chair, the members of the council, I think this discussion is extremely important in regards to some overall issues. First of all, the appeal was filed by Jackie Goldberg when she was a council member in the areas in her district. And I want you to know that that's important because this district at this time doesn't have a council member. Second, I have no problems with someone who lives in another area who wants to be a developer coming into a community and basically looking at that community saying, I can build 2-3 units on this lot, I'm going to buy it for that purpose. And that's what's happening here. And the Planning Commission and the department basically have said, you can build 2. He currently could build 2. He could build another house on the lot, but it would be a rental, not ownership. And I know that in some communities you look at rentals separate from ownership, but in some communities people actually have a house in front and a rental in the back so they can help them with their equity payments. Their children live there. I have that in my community. Now, I shared with Mr. Ridley Thomas a concept the other day. I said, you know, when the new census come in and we're reapportioning, the inner city council districts, instead of being 10 to 13 square miles of land, are going to be 8 to 11. And the districts that are currently large land masses, like Mrs. Kowski's, which is about 72 square miles of land, and Mr. Bernstein's, which is about 56 square miles of land, will get bigger. And that is because where we concentrate our density and the population base, we're concentrating on that density. See, a big lot with one house is not unusual in the city of Los Angeles, except that in certain parts of the city, there have been so many protections adopted that you cannot build a second house on that lot. Whereas in other parts of the city, those lots are very precious. And when Councilmember Alatoria, now Councilmember Pacheco, Councilmember Goldberg and I worked on the Northeast Pacific Plan, it basically was asking to reduce density as a whole. And it was asking that an infrastructure like schools and police protection be provided in order to sustain growth. In this case, we're not adding more schools. We're not adding more park space. We're adding more population. And there are parts of the city, quite frankly, that have empty schools with big lots and big homes on them where we don't allow for that kind of density. So when these residents who basically live next door to these lots are standing up to maintain the kind of quality they have there, and yes, there are other flag lots on that block, we were basically calling in the Northeast Pacific Plan to stop what is going on right now. And again, we did not put enough protections. And that's why I was asking that we basically support the appeal of Ms. Goldberg. Because I honestly believe the infrastructure in that particular area cannot support the growth. I honestly believe that that neighborhood deserves to have the kind of quality of life that the other homeowners who live there and are going to be long-term homeowners are asking for. And our specific plan doesn't allow that to happen. So if you take the rest of those lots and you multiply them by 2 or 3, which is what planning is saying can be done, you remove the opportunity for a home with another home for a family member. Now you're basically splitting those lots and allowing for ownership. And that's what's before us. I'm just trying to explain it because it was a very emotional issue for me because it's at the root of what I've been fighting for. A city that treats all its residents the same, regardless of economics. A city that understands it's growing, but when you're talking about increased density of housing, Let's look at where we should be doing it. Let's get to the crutch of it. And we should be doing it in those communities that have more land and have those huge lots with one house on them. We should be allowing that to happen. But everybody always tells me that's the no-no question. And that's why we continue to concentrate certain population bases in the inner city. And that's why I'm asking that we basically deny the applicant at this time and support the appeal. Because this is one of those few pockets in the Northeast Pacific area where people can have a big lot and basically cherish it.
Okay, Chair recognizes Councilman Pacheco. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
First of all, Mr. President and colleagues, I have questions before I decide on this because I have a basic gut feeling that is very problematic here. It's my personal opinion that historically, when we talk about the lot sizes of different neighborhoods and the requirements to have certain lot sizes, I have a personal viewpoint that may not be traditional, but for me it's very important to understand this in this context. It's my personal belief that when you look at the history of planning in this city, and you look back when the original lots and lines were drawn, that a lot of these lots were made large to discriminate. That a lot of these lots were made large to keep the poor or to keep certain ethnic groups out of certain neighborhoods. So if we're going to maintain that tradition of large lots for secondary reasons today, I really feel concerned that we're perpetuating some discrimination, some racism, some issues that really have to be looked at in terms of how we're doing our planning. I am very uncomfortable with this because of that, because I know that it was a tool used in the 20s and 30s and 40s to keep Mexicans, other ethnic groups out of certain neighborhoods. So I have a real problem with lot sizes being the deciding factor on this issue. With the housing crisis that we now face, I also have a question, an issue about this concern about density. I understand the concern about density as it relates to schools and the infrastructure. I understand that issue. My only position at this point is if we were to look at the schools as the barometer for whether or not we're going to build housing, especially affordable housing, and I'm not trying to say that this is an affordable housing effort because from what I understand it's not. But if you're going to use schools and impacting schools as a barometer, we're never going to build in this city because the school district is so far behind on having adequate schools for the children that we'll never build, if that's the test. If the test is, are we going to build homes or we're not going to build homes because of the impact on the schools, we will never build because the schools are so far behind. And I don't want to use that as the test. The R1 versus R4 or any other density issue, for me, the Northeast Plan protects the community in terms of, it protects us from having apartment buildings versus residential homes, and that was the goal. So if we're going to have more residential homes, I don't think it's inconsistent with the Northeast Plan. So my question is, how is this decision today going to further or derail what I consider a discriminatory practice in this city in terms of lot sizes? And how is this decision today going to impact how we view our housing crisis in terms of having more housing available in our communities for all people, regardless of their income, but all people need housing in the city. So I have some questions on this. I'm really uncomfortable not allowing the lot to be divided. So I just wanted to see if someone could answer those questions because I'm very concerned about this decision setting a precedent of continuing what I consider a discriminatory practice in this city.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair recognizes Councilman Burnson for a second time.
Members of the council, and specifically in answer to your question, it isn't even a question of how we feel about trying to accommodate Mrs. Goldberg's request. We're governed by zoning codes which are provided under the state law, and we really don't have a lot of prerogative here because it's my personal feeling, and I think that city attorney and others would would also back me up on this, that if this is denied, it would be viewed as a taking, and that we could conceivably be overturned by the courts, and that's undoubtedly, in my view, what will happen if this is not granted. So, in regard to the school situation, I think Mr. Pacheco made a very good point, and we have to understand that we are not held personally responsible, the City Council or the City of Los Angeles, for the schools, but we are being held responsible under state law for providing housing. And unless, in fact, we just voted this week to return our housing element back to committee because people felt it might not be adequate, we might not meet the state standards. So we cannot base our creation of housing on any other element other than the projection of population increases. And while it would be great if we had more schools, and I hope that the Unified School District and the powers that be will find the means to build them and provide that infrastructure that we need along with others, but we are required by the state to provide housing. We are also required to abide by the State MAP Act, and we are required basically to comply with the community plans. Now, if the community and the council in the office weren't happy with this new plan when it was drawn up, they should change it. And that's what we'll be happy to try to accommodate that. And if there was a prohibition against any more flag lots, that should have been built into the plan, either as a footnote or as part of the plan. But under the circumstances, I don't believe that we have any alternative other than to deny the appeal and grant the split. That's just my opinion. And I also am happy to accommodate the community that wishes to take another look, a broader look, and perhaps make some other adjustments. I don't necessarily hold with the theory that community plans were drawn in order to discriminate. I don't believe that's accurate. They may work that way sometimes, but that was not the intent. But I do believe it's up to the community who live there to have a strong voice in what their community plans say. And we would be happy to work with this community who is in opposition to this lot split to redefine the specific plan or community plan so it more reflects what the community wants, because that's where I think it really belongs. But in this particular case, it's not that I'm against the community. I just think that the law is very clear here, and we really don't have any real clear-cut alternative unless we want to get sued, overturned, and cost the city money. And my job is to tell the members of the council and spell it out. Now, the council can do what they want. If they want to reverse this and incur that liability, they can do that, because they can do that with 8 votes. But I've fulfilled my obligation as to tell you what I think is correct, and you can do what you want. But I would urge an aye vote on the majority report.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair recognizes Councilman Hernandez.
Yeah, I hope Mr. Pacheco can listen to my comments, because first let me share with you that I believe Mr. Berntsen and Councilmember Miskowski basically are telling you the facts. These are the facts, and they're correct. And Mr. Pacheco, when you made the comment about the specific plan, I was the vice chair of the Northeast CPAC before I got elected to office, and I worked on that plan. And Councilmember Alatorre and Councilmember Goldberg worked very hard with the community in many community hearings. And one of the things the community was saying is our infrastructure can no longer support more housing. And it's because some communities, particularly in the east side, El Sereno, Boyle Heights, Highland Park, wanted to preserve the sense of a neighborhood, and they felt that they already had too many apartment buildings. So one of the overall concepts was not being NIMBYs. They're saying, give us some schools, give us some parks, give us the kind of amenities a community should have to support the growth you're proposing. Now, they're correct that we needed a footnote in regards to this pocket, and we don't have it. And they're correct, and I honestly believe they're going to work hard with us to try and create that protection. And I wanted to make sure I understood that. I will not, again, I am supporting the appeal, and it's because I represent that community. It's next door to my district, But just so that you know where it is, Mr. Pacheco, because it's Toland Way between Avenue 50 and Division and York Boulevard. It's that pocket in between. El Paso, so between El Paso and York and Avenue 50. And you know that you can't see over the little hill on Avenue 50. And then there's a slope going from El Paso down towards York. And so it's just before that slope. So it's a pocket with large lots. Now, I'm going to work on that pocket, and I'm sure my colleagues are going to work with me. But as someone who worked on the specific plan very closely, I know our intent was to limit the number of flag lots in that area. I'm trying to explain that because that's what our intent was. Now, when I bring out the overall question, the reason I bring it out is because we as a city have to allow, and again, there are parts of the city where there are schools that are empty. There's parts of the cities where there are schools who are sustained by busing of children to them. And we don't talk about increasing housing density there. You see, I'm trying to explain that because there is going to have to be some affirmative actions into this council. And so when you talk about increasing density, you cannot just increase it in certain parts of the city while you still maintain protections in other parts of the city. And that's what I believe is not equal. And even though it might not have been done on a discriminatory basis, that is the reality of our city. And so I have always said this is at the crutch of a lot of the issues I've argued on behalf of. And that's why I am supporting the appeal. And again, I don't want you to believe that you're being misled by my colleagues because they're giving you the facts and they're true facts. I just know how my conscience tells me I have to vote.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair recognizes Councilman Pacheco.
I was asked to move the previous question, so I'll move the previous question at this point. Okay. I'm not sure what's on the floor. Is the minority report or the majority report on the floor?
Majority report is on the floor. Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other council member that wishes to speak? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, would you open the roll on the majority report and tabulate the vote?
6 ayes, 5 noes.
That item is not approved.
Carries over to the next
Carries over to the
agenda.
next
No,
agenda.
the time limit runs on the 29th, and without an action today by 8 votes on either side, the advisory agencies will stand, and that would be the majority vote, the majority report.
Right. Okay, so then I'll just, for purposes of going through the process, move the minority report at this time. And I'll ask for an aye vote.
Okay.
If you do approve the minority report, I would just like to remind the council that they would need to make the findings, including a consistency finding, to support it.
So
That's what
It would be up to the council to make the findings along with the planning department.
And I believe findings needs 10 votes.
No, it would need 8.
8?
Because this is a de novo review.
Thank you.
However, when you look at consistency, you have to look at the plan and what it says, so.
So, Madam City Attorney, will first vote on the findings and then on the minority? Or is that not necessary?
I don't think there are any findings before you. I think you need to elucidate them.
What we,
Okay. We can move B.
we can move, that is my motion at this time.
Okay, so at this time, there's a motion, Mr. Hernandez moves, and a second to move the minority report. Okay? Mr. Clerk, would you
Aye.
open the roll
I ask for an aye vote.
and tabulate the vote?
6 ayes, 5 noes.
Okay.
Okay? So that doesn't pass either, which means that the previous action, which is de facto the majority report, stands.
Exactly.
That's
Okay?
correct.
Next item.
Do you wish to go back to the regular meeting?
Yes. So we will adjourn the special meeting at this time and go back to the regular meeting.
Next item is items for public comment.
We do have a couple of cards for public comment. Melrose Larry Green and Glenn Doris, I believe it is Boone. Mr. Green.
Good afternoon. My name is Melrose Larry Green. Now, I was here a couple of weeks ago when you had a resolution. Can you keep quiet? I listened to you for the last hour. Thank you. I'm just a member of the public, that's all. Anyway, you had a resolution not supporting the nomination of Ashcroft as the Attorney General, and it passed 10-2. Now, I know that you're largely Democrats, and I used to be a Democrat until about 1992.
Mr. Green?
I think the city of L.A. should condemn Bill Clinton's pardon of a man named Mark Rich, who concealed more than $100 million in taxable income when his ex-wife donated more than $1 million to the Democratic Party. He was on the list of the Justice Department's 6 most wanted international fugitives. And if you can just imagine for a second, if a guy named George Bush was leaving office and pardoned a Republican who did the same thing, you'd all be screaming, condemning it. And this has nothing to do with my running for mayor, but nobody has said anything about this, not on the city council, not in the city attorney's office, not the people running for mayor, and I think that's a darn shame, because the city of L.A. is the sister city of the city of New York and the state of New York, and what's going on in L.A. directly impacts what goes on in New York and Sacramento and Washington. And if we're going to allow this to go on and not say anything, and not investigate Bill Clinton for once and for all, and redo what was done by the special prosecutor, then we all may just as well adjourn and get out of this business. Just because there are a lot of Democrats that give money.
Mr. President,
Melrose Larry Green.
to the Honorable Melrose Larry Green, is it the case that you began your remarks by saying that you listened to us for the last hour and a half?
Yes.
You did publicly assert that.
Yes. Thank you. I'm done.
I want to see you over on the sidebar, sir. I can give you some instructions.
I believe Ms. Boone has left, so I have no other cards for public comment. Next, Mr. Clerk.
The desk is clear.
Okay. Are there any adjourning motions? Yes, there are. Would the audience and the council please rise for adjourning motions? Chair recognizes Councilman Pacheco.
Colleagues ask that we adjourn in memory of Roel Morales. Roel Morales was a retired UCLA professor, passed away on January 23rd of a heart attack, survived by his spouse Annie, children Faith, Kathy, and Vicky. He was a longtime educator and leader in the Filipino American community of Los Angeles, founding member of Search to Involve Filipino Americans Youth Service Organization. He's the former director of the Asian American Community Mental Health Training Center and former director of the Asian Pacific Alcohol Program. According to many of the students, friends, and colleagues, including 2 members of my staff who took his class at UCLA, Roy Morales was more affectionately known as Uncle Roy and had made a significant impact in their lives. He has been a positive influence and inspired many young Filipino Americans to serve the Los Angeles community. He worked closely with the Filipino Christian Church. He was also very involved as the editor of Balitan, and through his classes in Filipino American experience at UCLA and elsewhere, Uncle Roy shared himself selflessly. Hopefully, through this adjourning motion, it'll be a small token of appreciation to his service, and we'll recognize his legacy, and obviously he's going to be missed throughout the Filipino community.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Padilla.
Mr. President, colleagues, request that we adjourn in memory of Ethel Cole Bryant. Born in 1917 in Texarkana, Arkansas, graduate of the University of Nebraska, married William Bryant in 1957, and came to California and immediately became active in the Northeast San Fernando Valley. Politically, we're long and strong, active supporters of Mayor Yorty, but are best known in the community, both her and William Bryant, as active leaders of the Judge Street Neighborhood Watch in and around Hubert Humphrey Park. She will be sorely missed.
Second. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Ridley Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the council, I respectfully request that we adjourn in memory of Hazel Moses. Mrs. Moses is the grandmother of one of my staff members, Mrs. Sandra Howell, and we wish to express our condolences to the entirety of their family. Secondly, if I could just simply join with Mr. Pacheco in acknowledging the passage of Mr. Morales. Some of us may recall his visits periodically to council on issues dealing with the Filipino community and beyond, an advocate of multiculturalism and a stand-up person for that which is in the best interest of all Angelenos, and we will mark his passing with sadness.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
Yeah, I just also, Mr. President, members of council, needed to make some comments about Uncle Roy. He was a tremendous person in the Filipino community, provided some consistency and leadership. I know that when I initially started running for office, I had a good part of that community in my district in terms of the 13th, and Uncle Roy was one of the first people I met. He came before this body on several occasions, but I don't think he was ever really acknowledged as basically the monument that he was for that community. It seemed that he was everywhere, and he basically fought for that community. Gerald Gubatan, who was on my staff, and then Jackie Goldberg's staff, Uncle Roy was basically one of the people he had to tag bases with on a lot of issues, and I'll sorely miss him because I considered him a friend, and I know he considered me a friend, and his advice was always well taken.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Wax.
Yes, I'd like all members to join in memory of Michael Magdaleno, a maintenance laborer at our wastewater collection system who was tragically involved in a fatal accident on the way to work on Tuesday. He is survived by his wife, Katie, their 3 children, Corey, Michael, and Kristen, and his parents, Luann and Michael, who's also employed by the Department of Water and Power. And he is going to be sadly missed, and it was a great tragedy, and I'll give the clerk the pertinent information.
Thank you. Are there any others? If not, Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll? Seeing no further business, this council is adjourned. Have a safe and pleasant weekend.